friends, Miss Becky here, and today I'm going to show you how to upcycle a 2-liter bottle into a custom hanging planter. For this project, you'll need a 2-liter soda bottle, potting soil, a plant, twine, acrylic paint, scissors. Optionally, you can have a box cutter and a hole punch, paper, a paintbrush, a pencil, and a Sharpie. Before we begin, let's use a piece of paper to draw out our design. Later, we can slide this into our bottle and trace it. You can design the bottle however you want, but I find that the bottles themselves are really nice for animal shapes. You can easily turn them into cats, pigs, bunnies, foxes, and more. And for inspiration, you can check out our Pinterest board. For my first sample, I made a fox, but today I really want to make an alpaca. So let's draw out our alpaca face. Here's a little tuft of hair for him. And there is his face. Give him some nice big eyes. And a little nose and smile. Then he'll need some more hair up here. And some ears. Give him a little bit of blush too. And that's where it's going to be, and then this rest of it here is going to be the top of the planter. And then down here will be the bottom of the planter for his little legs. Okay, our first step for cutting our bottle is going to be cutting this top part off. Our overall planter is only going to be about the bottom third of the bottle, but when we're cutting the top off, we'll want to leave more room for our animal's ears. Especially if you end up doing a bunny rabbit, you're going to want to leave a lot of room for your ears. Okay, so I'm going to start by using this box cutter to make a slit. You might be able to just use scissors, but if you need to use a box cutter, you can. You might want to talk to an adult in your household before finding and using a box cutter or a different sharp knife. So I just used it to make that first slit because that's the hardest part, but now that I have a slit, take the lid off. I can just use my scissors to cut around the outside. Okay, so next we'll want to put some holes in the bottom for drainage because it's best to let water be able to come out of the bottom of your pot so that way you don't accidentally overwater and drown your plant. So to punch the holes, you can try using a box cutter or scissors. What I'm actually going to do is an interesting technique I developed where I hammer a nail into the plastic and then pull the nail out to make a hole. The plastic on the bottom is a little bit thicker, so I had a hard time when I was using the box cutter. Do the rest of this off camera, but you get the general idea. Okay, so I punched a hole in each of these little feet at the bottom of my bottle. And I'm going to take my alpaca drawing and slide it in. Let's see how that lines up. I actually want him to be just a little bit shorter, so I'm going to cut it off the bottom of my paper. Okay, I like that position. So now I'll take a Sharpie and outline his face. Okay, and then I'll draw a line around the back so that way I know where I want to cut. Now I can use my scissors to cut down and cut out the top part of my outline. Since this is a circle, it'll be a little bit hard to get your hand in there, so you can cut off sections at a time, which will make it easier to do some of the fine details, so that way you can get your hand inside the bottle more easily. Okay, I'm going to trim this part down a little bit closer before I start cutting that out too. Just getting that excess plastic out of the way will help make it easier to cut out some of these areas. All right, so now he is all cut out, and the last step will be making the spots where you can hang twine from, if you want it to be a hanging planter. If you'd rather have your planter just sit on a table, then you are ready to go. But for a hanging planter, if you have a hole punch, that will be the easiest way to make your holes. If you don't, you can use your box cutter or scissors to make some slits that you can put your twine through. Okay, I want to do, on this one I only did 3, but it made him a little bit tippy. So on this one I'm going to do 4 holes for my twine. I'm gonna go down a little bit. If I go too close to the edge, there's a chance the plastic could break. I'm going to try and keep it nice and even. Okay, now we'll paint. All right, so now we will be painting our alpaca. We're going to start with some white to kind of do a little bit of a base coat that will help overall cover up the clearness of this, because it's a clear, slick plastic. It can take a couple coats to make it so it's not see-through. So we're just going to do some white first. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick layer, and you can see that I can still see my Sharpie through that. So I'm not going to worry about going around my outlines or anything. Just a quick base layer of white. You might want to use a scratch paper to set your container down on, so that way you don't get any paint on the surface you're working on. Okay, so just a quick layer of white, and now You can make any color you want. If you have red, yellow, and blue, you can mix them into any color, like red and yellow make orange, yellow and blue make green, so pretty basic color stuff. I actually just want my alpaca to be an all blue alpaca with a light blue face and a slightly darker blue fur. So I'm going to mix the white that I already poured with just a tiny bit of this blue. Okay, so there I have a nice light blue for his face. Just gonna get in there kind of carefully to go with the outline that I made. Okay, now I want the rest of his fur to be slightly darker, so I'm gonna mix some more blue in there. Gonna test it, see if that's enough contrast. Yep, that's a pretty good amount of contrast. So now I'll go in and paint the rest of his fur. When you run out of paint and you have to color match, it's pretty difficult. Let's see if I can do it. That's pretty good. Okay, so you can see, I mean, I made a giant mess, but I was able to get pretty close to the blue that I originally mixed. Now I'm just gonna get the bottom. On my fox, you can see that I gave him little feet and I made them black. On my alpaca, I didn't really line up the little feet enough, so it looks like he has 3 in the front, so I'm not gonna make them black on him. Now I'm just going to paint his eyes black and add a little bit of blush to his cheeks, and then I'll wait for it to dry. So I mixed up some pink paint. I'm using a slightly smaller paintbrush this time. I'm going to add a little bit of blush to his cheeks. And I'm going to paint the inside of his ears pink too. Okay, so now I got the pink done. So I'm going to use a little bit of black to fill in his eyes. Okay, and that is all I'm going to do with my paint. Now I'm going to wait for him to dry, and when he's dry, I'm going to use my Sharpie to outline the rest of his features. So I'm going to outline his face and his nose and his ears. I did the same thing on my fox. It gives it a little bit of a cartoony type of pop, which is what I was going for. But if you want your animal to look more realistic, you can instead go back in with a few different shades of paint and not use the Sharpie. Really, it's totally up to you however you want your planter to look. While I'm waiting for my alpaca to dry, I'm going to go ahead and put my twine in. I would suggest that you wait until yours is completely dry when you do it, but I'm just going to show you right now. So you'll want to cut about 2.5 feet of twine. Go ahead and stick it into the holes that you pre-punched. Halfway through, you want to bring both ends up. That gives us a nice loop to hold into place. And then want to tie a knot. Now I'm going to do the same process for my 3 other holes. Okay, once they're all attached, go ahead and gather them together. I have my strings bringing it all together, and now I'm going to tie a knot. Okay, so now I have my knot and these strings above it. I'm going to split them into 2 groups and then tie these 2 groups together, leaving a space that makes a loop so I can hang this from a hook. Go. So there is where I'll hang it from. And there we go. All right, so now we are going to plant. So I have some potting soil and a pothos plant, which I actually propagated myself. So to propagate a pothos plant, you just trim off some of the leaves and plant them in new soil, and it grows roots. Pothos are really great house plants. They're very hard to kill, and they are pretty laid back in terms of how much light and how much water they need. So they're great plants for this project. So to plant it in our planter, I'm going to start by taking some of my potting soil and putting it in the bottom of my planter. Okay, now I'm going to take my pothos out of this little container. Let's see how this works. Not bad. And I'm going to, it crumbled. Move him in there, and then come in and put some more dirt around the outside. Okay, so I got it filled up with dirt. Now I'm going to water him, let the water drain out of my little holes, and then put him in a sunny spot. All right, so our planters are all done. I am still gonna outline this with Sharpie, but thank you for crafting with me today. I hope you had a nice time making your own planter, and make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Bye.